think a lot of Dardoch as a person translates into him as a player. He's really explosive. He has a really alpha personality, you know, so that definitely shows in the game.
He's like a real alpha male kind of guy, like hits the gym. He's really confident, probably overconfident a bit. Everyone is kind of feeding his ego just because he had a good performance against me in week 1.
Last time I played him, I manhandled him the whole series.
Acadian puts the team on his back.
Look at that man, he's got bigger shoulders in and out of game.
He's the best jungler, besides me, of course, at actually fighting people.
A triple kill for Immortal Jungler. They're taking down the whole team.
He's just brute forcing and beating everybody with superior mechanics. I was in his position last year, like it's not gonna work against me. I'm just a 10 times smarter player than he is.
It doesn't look like Immortals has any idea what they're doing. We should have the upper hand.
I'm just going to beat him because I have the better team.
Welcome back to Week 5 of the North American League Championship Series. You're joining us live from our studios here in Los Angeles, California. And as you can see, the fans are out in force once again for a big day of games here in Week 5. We've got a break in the LCS next week, so we got to get our fill today. Echo Fox filing in earlier up against their opponents, Immortals and FlyQuest, making their way into the studio, looking to bounce back after a loss. TSM upsetting C9 yesterday. That was a big win for them, hoping to keep the momentum going. Hello, everyone. I'm James Dash Patterson. Bringing their expertise to the analyst desk today are Mark Zimmerman and Aiden Zyrene Moon. Gentlemen, how we doing today at the end of the weekend?
Pretty good. I think actually today has a lot of really good matchups, so I'm excited to see exactly what happens.
Yeah, and with, of course, C9 losing yesterday, no one in the league is undefeated anymore. Anything can happen. First order of business is to review the standings and look to see how the teams are stacked up. Despite suffering their first loss last night, Cloud9 remain on top, but only one match ahead of TSM in second. FlyQuest goes into today in third, with FenixOne in fourth, while our teams in the lower half of the standings hope to break from the pack today. We'll see if they can do so with our scheduled matches. First off, on NALCS1, FlyQuest and TSM go toe-to-toe in a battle for second, with FenixOne versus Cloud9 later in the day. On NALCS2, Dardoch and Immortals duke it out against Acadian and Echo Fox. Then Team Liquid hope to best CLG for our second match in the Battle Theater. Make sure to tweet any questions you have to @LOL Esports, and myself, Jad, or Kobe might answer them on NALCS tonight after the show. First things first, though, I want to touch on the Giants at the top of the table. Cloud9 suffering a defeat at the hands of TSM just last night.
Yeah, and I think that Cloud9, they've actually had some vulnerabilities in their early game, and that's what we saw exploited. We actually saw this punished a little bit in their series against TL and their series against FlyQuest, all of which have gone 3 games. So Cloud9, they've actually been a little bit trending downwards, and I think a lot of that is the way that their jungle and their mid have been playing together when there is a bad jungle game. So I think Contracts and Wild Turtle as well are the two that have been struggling the most on this team.
Right, and I think one thing that was surprising was the way that TSM actually did win. We always talk about Bjergsen and Sven being really important, and they did have some good early games, but a lot of the wins did come off the back of the great team fighting that both Hanser and Bjergsen had, where they were kind of tag teaming a lot of stuff. They had the Maokai Orianna game and then the Shen Zed game, where they were always kind of piggybacking off each other.
Yeah, and you said it's a really interesting way that that game ended up going, because we were actually saying Cloud9 looked like they had the strongest solo lanes, and that Contracts and Wild Turtle were the ones that were, struggling a little bit sometimes sneaky sometimes for Cloud9.
Yep.
So that was a game where we actually saw the solo laners not perform up to the standard that we had actually seen the rest of the split.
Right, not on the side of Cloud9, but for TSM, proactive plays, strong play out of both solo laners, brought them the victory. Of course, an exciting win for TSM, but the work's not done for them this weekend. They have to go up against FlyQuest for that kind of second place positioning just today. So it's a big weekend for TSM.
Yeah, I mean, TSM, they ended up upsetting Cloud9. FlyQuest were actually upset themselves by Dignitas. I think FlyQuest, they're really cute in the draft phase, but I think they tried to get a little too cute there. They ended up drafting Jarvan 2 games in a row against Zed. Maybe they were considering it was a counter, but I think overall the compositions were still rather weak. And for TSM coming into this matchup against a team that drafts really differently, it's so hard to prepare for, because TSM last played last night, 7 p.m., Now they're playing at noon today, so they haven't had much turnaround when they're going up against FlyQuest.
And just to touch on kind of that FlyQuest upset a little bit more, a lot of the teams are slightly inconsistent in the league, and if you end up with a certain matchup against another lower-seeded team, I think it's pretty easy for teams to get upset because Dignitas plays this really reactive style. FlyQuest obviously getting a little cute in the draft, and they're very aggressive, so that's a great matchup for Dignitas. Another upset that kind of happened was Echo Fox
against Envy.
Against Envy, right? And we always talk about Echo Fox having a great early game. Envy has a fantastic early game as well. They're up 500 on average at 15, and this time Echo Fox couldn't get off the ground early. Lyra had a great matchup, and that kind of catapulted them over their upset win.
Yeah, like you said, anything could kind of happen because we're actually seeing these players that have had dominant performances, like Jensen, fall a little bit. Moon had his worst performance with FlyQuest. And then also Acadian yesterday had his worst performance of the split so far. So right now, those people we knew as being consistent, strong forces for their team have taken a little bit of a hit yesterday.
Yeah, Lyra had his number in that series. I want to look at Immortals and Echo Fox. As it was just mentioned, both those teams sustained losses. They're playing against each other today. That means one of these teams is coming out in an 0-2 week. Not what they wanted midway through the season, kind of as they're making their run towards playoff positioning.
Right, especially because they were both 2-0 last week, so they're both trending upwards, saying like, oh yeah, we're turning it around, this is going to be great. Both suffer a loss in their first match of the week, and now one of them is destined to go 0-2, so one of them's going to have not the best weekend. But they have a break next week to kind of figure things out.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see which teams can continue their climb as we send it to our casters to kick off the games.
Thank you very much, Dash. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Battle Arena. My name is David Freak Turley. Joining me here is Joshua Jat. These things we cast yesterday. It was a great experience. We're doing it again.
Yeah, we got a pretty good game here as well with FlyQuest
Yes.
and TSM. Battle for second.
It's going to be exciting. So, yes, it's the, as you mentioned, Battle for Second, FlyQuest taking on TSM. And honestly, this week was the week that TSM were underdogs. They played against Cloud9. Now they have to play against FlyQuest, and yet they beat Cloud9. And now they can just completely push FlyQuest away from them and heavily control second if they win here.
Yeah, huge week for TSM and a lot of tests coming up. And at least TSM's upset over Cloud9 seemed within a realm of possibility. But when you look at FlyQuest, their loss on Friday against Dignitas came completely out of left field. Most people thought that was a sure thing for FlyQuest. So if we look at the way FlyQuest wins, it kind of feels like they slammed their foot on the gas pedal. We talk about how fast they play. They're weaving their way to a win. But they kind of crashed against Dignitas, throwing themselves into a wall over and over again. And we'll see if FlyQuest can get back into their groove. Because if they don't, then they're looking at a 3-match losing streak after what was such a stellar start to the split.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe they're kind of falling back down to earth. But if FlyQuest, the way they win is like recklessly driving a sports car, then TSM, it's like they're commandeering a tank. Because Haunter in the top lane has been nothing but solid and steel-plated and amazing. His stats here, this is just against Impact, by the way. Smashing him in lane, doing a whole bunch of damage. Like, just a really stellar player as he was yesterday.
Yeah, the plus 18.7 CSD at 15 really stands out. And Haunter said in a recent interview that he wanted to make it clear that he is the best top laner in North America. Those are his goals for this split. And yesterday, he and Bjergsen did make sure to extend their leads in the solo lanes to kind of other parts of the map, which was really effective for TSM. And they need to kind of keep with that style as they're trying to find that second leader behind Bjergsen.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So we'll see if TSM can keep shaping up and if FlyQuest can do the same. Let's check out the starting lineups for this match. On the blue side, bright yellow logo. It's going to be Balls in the top lane, Moon in the jungle, High in mid, Altec the bot laner, support elimination, Coach Think Card rounding out the lineup.
Yeah, so FlyQuest hoping to bounce back from Friday. And on the red side, it is TSM looking to carry momentum from last evening. Hotzer's in the top lane, Svenskeren in the jungle, Bjergsen the mid lane, bot lane is Wild Turtle, and Biofrost with Parth as the coach.
This will be an interesting match to look at, absolutely. All 10 players, of course, in the lobby. Pick spans will start soon, but it's very interesting looking at the North American LCS in spring because you have Cloud9 as a leader, but it feels like every team is still really ramping up still. You've got Dignitas, who suddenly has won, I think it's 3 matches in a row, suddenly shaping up pretty well. Envy's won a couple of matches now as well. You've got these teams improving, and TSM looked so much better yesterday than almost any time in the rest of the year, and you're hoping this growth continues for all these teams.
Yeah, but the weird thing about this, and the disheartening thing, so to speak, if you're hoping for NALCS to be the crisp, clean of the crop, or however you want to say it, is how inconsistent it is, right? Because TSM, they look good against C9, but 6 days prior, they're getting blasted by Echo Fox, so you never know which team is really going to step up or show up until you see it on the Rift.
Absolutely, and it makes us look at FlyQuest to say, well, they had defied their own expectations coming in, and the question was, is this FlyQuest being better, or is every other team really weak at the very start of the split? FlyQuest, of course, 6-3, still a pretty solid scoreline, and we'll see if they can take this win over TSM. And if they do so, they would currently hold the tiebreak in controlling second place. But, of course, they would rematch again later on in the season. Kha'Zix and Graves banned away from Svenskeren in the jungle. Moon, of course, has his own pocket picks like
Yeah.
Evelyn. I think he's happy to withstand jungle bans.
Yeah, I think that's definitely what they're pushing towards. Moon has had some very good games on Rengar, even though he did lose with it against Team Dignitas. So pulling the jungle pool down to just those champions, especially when you consider Kha'Zix and Graves are kind of the top two, and then opening the door for Moon to play it and then not having to face a meta pick.
Yeah.
Something FlyQuest should be pretty comfortable with.
Okay, so the Rengar actually does come through as a ban. Looking at the big S-tier champions, Ryze is up there, Maokai's up there, Varus as well, and of course Maokai being the first pick. Want to see what else happens at the end of this.
Yeah, no huge surprises there, especially with Shen being banned and Hauntzer's success when he's been on tank champions.
True.
So TSM hasn't had as much success when Haunzer has been on others, but they're forced off the main super good tanks, and he's going to have to go with Nautilus, which he is currently 2-1 with on the year if they lock that in here.
Seems like it's going to be the case. Of course, you saw him hover many other squishier picks. Jace also crucially still available in the lineup, but not going to be the grab so far. It will be tank versus tank, and FlyQuest kind of got what they bargained for with the first pick. They got the higher priority one. Now TSM can make their own choices. 3 junglers off the table. All the bot laners, all the supports available. All of the mid laners as well. LeBlanc, Ryze, Jace, a lot of high priority champions still out there.
Exactly, and you can kind of see, especially when TSM matches with the Nautilus, that they're trying to go with a much more counter pick strategy here, trying to utilize probably the last 2 picks they'll have in their draft. Red Side has a lot of power between their 3rd and 4th pick because they get the last pick of the first phase of the draft, followed by the first pick of the second phase and the last pick of the second phase. So what's surprising again with TSM's draft is their deprioritization of Varus, who has been mainly a permaban for most teams on 7.3. We actually saw it go completely through the draft in Game 3 of TSM vs Cloud9, and they kind of give it up to FlyQuest, who probably wasn't expecting to get it after first picking Maokai.
Yeah, unless they'd done their own research and said, oh, we know TSM doesn't value it, we can take it later on, and that risk has paid off because clearly FlyQuest does value Varus as the most important bot laner since they could have picked anything else they wanted. And quickly it's going to be matched up with Ashe in the bot lane, so we have another draft where mid laners are left open into the later phase. And again, with no bans at all, nothing seems to be powerful enough to be worth grabbing in the first phase.
Yeah, and this is where it's going to get really interesting too as far as what bans are chosen. A lot of teams have tried to target high in the ban phase, push him off what they think is his small champion pool. He's kind of shown a lot of success on different champs. However, the mismatch here is the jungle pick, where TSM has Lee Sin locked in, whereas FlyQuest has a support. And while TSM is throwing bans at high, even though they have a chance to pinch jungle, FlyQuest is actually pinching support, since they have a support and they can ban out the rest from TSM.
Absolutely. There's always a small chance you see Karma flexed as well, but that's very unlikely here. Zed dropped off the table as well. 2 assassins gone from high. There's always the Jarvan if he wants it. Echo in there. Corki's been a very big pick for him, and I wonder, considering the 2 assassin bans, if Corki just ends up being the first pick for Bjergsen anyway.
Yeah, it has been so successful for High, as he has done not only a lot of damage with Corki, but a lot more damage than other Corkis who have been played in the NALCS.
Ryze actually off the table instead, so that's not what they thought the first pick was going to be. They didn't think it was going to be Corki, because otherwise you wouldn't bother. And it's going to be a couple of hovers now. TSM, of course, get to first pick here, and again, they need support, which will not be pinched anymore, so there's no rush. So the question is, do they want to counterpick mid, or do they want priority on mid? And they've got to kind of pick that now.
Exactly, and it's kind of a question of how well do they think High can counter something like Jace, since Jace is considered a power pick here, as is Corki. So despite the 2 assassin bans, High could definitely find a pretty easy access to a strong poke champion. And obviously TSM with that Nami pick right there, I think it was between Nami and Thresh for TSM. They're leaving that mid lane for a counter pick.
That was what they prioritized here. 3 mid lane bans, everything else up on the table. Of course, FlyQuest need to grab their jungler. Shake! Whoa! Yes! Oh, baby! Yeah, and Moon smiling and nodding. Shaco in the jungle is here. I have people ask about the champion. He's definitely been strong in solo queue.
Yes.
Oh, baby!
And yes, we've talked to a lot of people about this, because a lot of times solo queue is an indicator of like what champions are OP, and there are 2 Shaco main junglers in the top 10 of Challenge.
Yep.
The champion very strong at a high level of play, but no one has really ported it over to the competitive game yet. And the reason we think this is, we were talking about this amongst the casters, is Shaco late game is a very different style in solo queue than it is to competitive. And you need so many games on Shaco to learn how to kind of fit that into the pro style. FlyQuest, though, have been so free to kind of give Moon a lot of rope with the way he plays on Evelynn and kind of find those solo queue success cases where he can take a bunch of farm and split push and flank around to try and one-shot people. And that's kind of what Shaco is going to do here. We'll get into his build a little bit more when we're getting into the game because there are a lot of different options you can do on Shaco, but it looks like he's going the full Shaco, Ignite with the Smite early on here, and that's what we're used to seeing.
This is awesome, but this is going to be a bunch of fun. Smite, Ignite, Shaco. Moon is to my knowledge, still the only Evelynn player in competitive, and this might be the first, as chat looks it up, I was going to do the same, but I'll let you do it. This might be the first Shaco of the year as well, so Moon might be a 2x only person in pro play to play this champion player right now, and he's been very good. So this style has worked out for Moon so far with FlyQuest. Moon is one of the KDA leaders of the jungle, one of the overall kill leaders of the league as well. He's, I think, top 4. And this is going to be a whole bunch of fun. I love seeing new picks come out. I'm very excited about that, and I'm going to be watching very intently to see just what Moon can do in this game. Svensson, of course, on the meta Lee Sin. He never leaves pro play. We all know how strong that champion can be. And now Sven plays solo queue. He's played against Shaco before, I'm certain of it, but has he ever scrimmed against it? And I doubt that.
Yeah, it is super, super rare in any pro play. The last we can see when the stats people just went and looked into this was Spring European Finals in 2015 where Kikis played a Shaco game. But like that was already pretty much 2 full years ago in a different country. So it's definitely not something you're used to seeing in pro play.
Kikis is a guy who played Jungle TF for a while. Like that guy was probably more of an originator than Moon was, but we are ready to go into this match. It's going to be a whole bunch of fun. FlyQuest taking on TSM with Moon bringing out the first Shaco jungle in about 2 years.
Oh yeah.
Here we go, game 1, battle for second place on the line. Let's go.
Yeah, so first off, we're going to have to see where Moon layers his boxes at the start of the game, because that is one of the things about him jumping out to very early level spikes above the opponent jungler. And then it's also going to be about whether Moon just uses the threat of Shaco to alter the enemy laning patterns, or if he actually goes for the early gank with Ignite. Because that's one of the things you can do with the Ignite on Shaco is since your gank threat is so high, sometimes you just almost trick the opponent into hard farming and find a lead that way. So a lot of options that Moon has with the Shaco.
Absolutely, and it starts with an early invade as they're expecting it to be actually maybe towards the red buff. In fact, there is a box there, but TSM going to drop a ward and that's it. They're not going to try to pop the boxes. That's maybe too much of a risk for them. High does not choose to deal damage. Okay, he hits Haunter once. That was some tempered aggression right there. High could have unloaded. Elimination gets 8 gold. Oh, baby. All right, well, apparently we got to talk to Moon a little while ago about a topic. Let's hear from him real quick.
Evelynn is like really hard to pick up. You need a lot of games, and I've played her since Season 2. I've been like an Evelynn main since Season 2. It's kind of like similar to Shaco, I guess, in a sense that you need a lot of games to master how to play the champion, and she's really unique compared to other champions.
A little foreshadowing there from Moon. Obviously, I'm trying to put a lot of games in. The ward has been spotted there. Haunter's also going to try and get a good trade in onto Balls right here. Nautilus can out-trade Maokai level 1 for sure.
But Balls thankfully had his passive available already, so got a bit of a heal coming through. And they're going to trade their blows and walk back and forth. Obviously, it's going to be fun one to watch for. And it's crucial that TSM knows where Moon started. Because of the boxes, you know he can kind of start anywhere he wants to, and he doesn't need a leash, really. But they do know he did blue into Gromp, and that means that Moon must be bot side in the next 5 seconds after he does Wolves. And it should allow Haunter to play without Shaco around. And TSM's bot lane have to realize that Shaco can be near.
Yeah, and for now, it does look like he's just going the hard farming route very quickly to level 3. Only had to use 1 stack of his refillable potion. But you do notice that regardless, all of FlyQuest lanes are pushing in right now. Aside from Haunter, who would kind of know that he's clear of a Shaco at this point since it's been so long that since they've seen him do the blue buff.
Yep. So checking in on Shaco, of course, Thunderlords, not a surprise. I checked earlier, not running any lethality runes to my knowledge. He's got 9 lethality, which I believe is just the mastery, or close to it.
He also has 14 AP right now, so Shaco does have 16 AP actually, so...
Yeah, so it's AP glyphs and 12 points offense, which will give you like the 4-ish ability power based on character levels. That's my guess.
Started the game with 14, so We can obviously check the room page in the post-game stats afterwards, but Shaco has a lot of kind of hybrid scalings on some of his spells where he's got an AP and an AD ratio on these things, so you can take AP runes and still do a full lethality build, which is what I'm probably expecting from Moon. Most of the Shacos and High Challenger do the lethality rushes a lot of times with Tiamat and just kind of try to deceive behind you and one-shot you. We've also seen a recent resurgence of some Sunfire Cape Shaco, surprisingly, into a Trinity Force that has a lot of kind of bruiser effectiveness. These things happen when a champion actually is just overtuned or overloaded. You see multiple builds that work, but once again, Moon, the first one to bring it into competitive this year.
This is the first time I've actually seen TSM with their overwhelming vote lead, and it's kind of, in a way, good to see all the fans get their faith back after TSM played so well yesterday. Again, early to tell, you don't want to crown the Kings yet, obviously, but you're always hoping to find that team that's just playing really sharply all the time. TSM showed a good game yesterday, and we'll see if they can find more.
Yeah, and this actually, I think Sven Skaren didn't quite get hit by that Squires Bloom, but he's still going to end up with safety in securing his Gromp, so a counter-jungling attempt by Moon is unsuccessful.
Yep, otherwise we've been trading the jungle pretty equally back and forth.
Yeah, he's got 6 seconds left on his deceive because he had to deceive away here, so his gank timing is actually a little bit messed up, and that would be a really telegraphed gank if he does go mid. Notice how smart Sven Skaren is, pathing through the back of the turret right there in case a Shaco gank. That would have been something Sven could turn around, so Moon smartly doesn't go in.
There was a ping off towards him, though. They actually said, warning, warning, someone's up around that side of the map, and it looks like they were appropriate in figuring out that he was over there. Ooh, this would be good by Sven, though. Nice hook on the balls. That was beautifully executed. The hook lands as well from Hotzer. First blood into the top lane.
They made it look so easy. We've been so distracted by Shaco, we're missing out on the other storylines, right? Hauntzer had the early level 1 trade on balls, harassed him actually quite low there, and then they kill balls before he can even react. And we're also not mentioning the career rivalry between High and Bjergsen. We got to see that drop-down stat a moment ago, where they're neck and neck with career wins against each other. It's been a very close team rivalry when these guys play each other, and we get it once again here, Cinder vs. Corky.
Absolutely, yeah. So much to go around this game. Sidetracked by the Shaco, but I mean, why wouldn't you be? He's always the center of attention a lot of the time. We can see right now, 500 gold lead for TSM, largely from the first blood itself. Quick reset coming down, and most of these lanes have been trading close to equal. Oh, Sven, ooh, okay. Good ward. Hello. Just kidding. Land the Q. Come on. Huh, do it, yeah! Jeez, High's almost dead. All right, that went well for Sven Skaren. And that's some turret pressure.
And that's going to be a lot of turret pressure because it's a cannon wave, so those minions are going to be smacking away on it. Gotta say, the early game pressure has been hugely advantaged Sven Skaren. The failed counter jungle by Moon, no gank attempts, and nothing with this Ignite Shaco has come in for use right now.
This turret's already dead.
Trying to get a little bit of CS/prevent the turret from going down.
Ooh, a lot of damage on the Sven. Q's actually has to flash away because he had aggro, and now Lemon's in. Tushev's going to hit him in the back.
Moon still has Ignite, Bjerg still has ult, but no mana.
All right, they are going to get away with it, and the turret is going to stay alive. Moon rushing for the T-Mat for clear speed. But otherwise, I mean, that is a very low health turret. High is thankful that he has both the summoners available. Bjergsen and Sven both lost 1 each. So maybe a repeat gank goes well for FlyQuest, but first turret could be going to very soon in the mid lane.
Yeah, that is big trouble that they're getting harassed solo. And the fact that Sven Skaren landed that Q onto High, really delaying the recalls enough to get that to happen. But we did get a small preview of the early burst that even just the Tiamat Shaco has, what he's max deceive build, which is what he's going. That can turn into one-shot potential on targets like Nami, Ashe, or even Syndra in the mid-game.
Absolutely. Things to watch for. You got to be careful. Early Hex Trigger comes through for High, knows he needs to be defensive against Bjergsen. Syndra knows there's a lot of damage available to his lane opponent. Top lane starting to get a little bit more Hanser favored. He's got a small CS lead. He's still pushing in. Both top laners do have teleport available. Level 7 just now reached by the Nautilus. Should be soon for the Maokai. Bot laners, though, to give credit to FlyQuest, all tech elimination are winning. And it's not a matchup that I think you outright win easily. Since Battlefield can heal, usually it's fairly easy to withstand Varus.
Yeah.
But plus 10 is a good mark.
Yeah, Nami is a really good laning champion, but we actually see an invade onto Moon. High's here, though.
And of course the smite. Yes, he makes Moon smite it away. High actually knocked up. Hunter still wants to fight him. This seems a little aggressive, but I guess they do have the members around. Sven was coming down, and now that's going to be the turret. They just put in the effort, and it's close. A few more autos will do it, and looks like the minion wave. Ooh, he doesn't want to go for the risk. Exhaust is on. They might have the damage. Bjergsen still has flash, and that knockback was crucial to keep himself alive.
It really was. I like the initiative by TSM to try and get that turret, but they haven't got it yet, and now Balls TP's in.
Yeah, but Balls couldn't reach for the flash W. Nice lockup by Hanser, buying a bit more time. Now Hanser himself forced to run, does have the flash, cuts the wall, and he'll get away. This is TSM playing very aggressively, trying to capitalize on their lead, and FlyQuest just barely holding on against it.
Yeah, and it's all map play. There was not much kill threat in any of those moves that TSM made, but they got that turret pretty much one auto from going down and forced a lot out from FlyQuest. Notice the Ignite, the Exhaust, and the Teleport all burned across 3 different players on FlyQuest.
And here's Biofrost. To make sure it comes through, and at this point, unless you can insta-clear the wave, this is going to be a killed turret. Elimination wants to tank it. You see he runs forward. Balls is there.
Oh, man!
Finds Bjergsen, and that's the kill! FlyQuest able to answer one. The root got to land on Biofrost as well. Bubble only hits Lemon, but in the back line they go, clearing the minions out. That is a crucial save by FlyQuest, getting the members there.
Yeah, and just as TSM was good to apply the pressure the first time, they go a little bit too far that time, and FlyQuest is not one to wait around and let you pull off map plays on them. They are going to fight you. This time, they're able to lock down onto Bjergsen, killing him before he can use his summoner spells because they had him dead to rights. Great counterplay there by High.
Absolutely beautiful. Watch that again, and it's just the capitalize. The collapse is there. Yeah, Balls are just behind him.
Yeah, so they had a control ward in the jungle behind there, and I believe TSM would have just expected Balls to walk back up to top lane after teleporting, but because he stuck around, it enabled FlyQuest to make that aggressive play.
This mid lane turret's got to have like 7 HP right now. I'm clicking on it.
Yep.
19. I was off by a bit.
Thank you, observers, as well, for checking it for everyone. Really just kind of keeps this game very close until they can crack that. And if TSM continues to overcommit to this turret, it constantly allows FlyQuest to counteract it. What's difficult, though, is when you're up against something like a Syndra, even for Shaco or for Corki, if they step too far up to Syndra, they can actually just get killed right away. Moon is not building any magic resist. He's actually gone Boots of Mobility on top of his Tiamat right now. So unless they can get Bjergsen to blow cooldowns onto High, Moon can't even show himself in the mid lane to help defend that turret.
Things to watch out for then as the mid lane is being traded at equilibrium. It's funny, if someone just walks up and backdoor hits it, it'll actually, I think, die to a single auto attack from like Biofrost or Svenskeren, but of course they don't want to lose up a kill for that. TSM still not under a lot of pressure of losing first turret gold, but still be something to keep our eyes on. 300 gold difference, TSM still on the small lead. Advantage is pretty heavy in the mid lane. 25 up for Bjergsen 10 minutes in is pretty darn substantial. Balls likely has assist to himself and is trying to fight back against Hanser, but Hanser winning that pretty cleanly.
Exactly, and with the first blood top lane as well as the extra time Ball spent in the mid lane, that's opening up a large advantage in the top lane as well. So not too uncommon that we see FlyQuest soul lanes down in CS because they're either losing the lane a little bit, but then that's extended by the fact that they make so many roam attempts on their plays. And we're seeing those leads open. Ooh! It's a matter of playing back.
Nicely done by Sven. That might have actually been blind. I don't think there was any vision. Oh no, they had a ward right there, but still very nicely played by him to land that last hit. Unlucky for Moon. High gets stunned up. The kick it back in, and it's going to be lights out for Corki. Nice kill picked up Sven, and Bjergsen delivering.
Super dead. Looks like he kind of either got interrupted out of his Valkyrie over the wall there by a Scatter the Weak. So,
I think so.
The timing there on TSM preventing High from escaping in normal Corki ways. Clutches to give him that first turret. Pretty rare you see the mid lane as the first turret of the game as well.
Yeah, but it's where the pressure was. Svenskeren showed up, got the gank, and decided to stay for the turret damage. And, you know, that kind of risk of not clearing your jungle again has paid off with that 1,000 gold influx and TSM up 2K. Can feel real good about this one. Bot lane holding on well enough. BF Sword Zertgreaves in for Ashe means he's kind of got past the first troubling recall. And worth noting that Wild Turtle has actually gone for the Doran's Blade opener, even though he's probably going FP3 for this game.
Yeah. I'm still personally a fan of starting Doran's Blade. It is still a very gold-efficient item, and it does, in my opinion, keep your laning up. If you have a Nami as well, you're not worried about that extra 3 potions for sustaining.
Right, exactly.
So you can still just kind of get some of that burst resilience he's going to need as well, because against a Shaco, that is a threat early on of jungler trying to come in and burst you, but he's going top for Hanser. He's got all summoners up there.
They landed a fear. They're going to land a 2-man tidal wave almost. Elimination locked up with the bubble. Flashing, but Sven's already there. Q's going to land. Now can they get much more? Altec in a bad spot. There's the kick back into the rest of the team. Nowhere for Altec to go, and Sven is absolutely everywhere. Even Q's back to the minion wave to make it look even cooler. 4-0, all the kills on this Lee Sin.
Yes, Svenskeren's consistently been in exactly the right place at the right time, but that one was actually pretty obvious that FlyQuest shouldn't have been up that far because Moon had just shown top lane Now Moon's going to try and get something back, but it's tough to dive at Nautilus.
It's going to be hard right now, actually. Ball's still holding aggro, jukes it back down. Now it's Moon, and he might die for this one.
Oh, it's
That's
switched.
way too much damage. Yeah, he dropped aggro, and the clone's not going to do any damage. What a catastrophically bad dive.
Exactly. What happened there is Moon, pretty much everything went wrong during that dive, because Moon sent his clone in, which is what you want turret aggro to have initially. Then you would want it to swap to the Maokai after he twisted advances, and then the Shaco is supposed to maybe get it last after Moon clears. It all goes wrong. Balls gets the turret aggro to start. Because he twisted advances, switches onto Moon's main body, not the clone, and he goes down right away. But this is the earlier gank we're talking about, where TSM knows they can get a 2v3, and even though the arrow kicks a field goal by going through Elimination and Altec, Svenskeren knows there's no counter gank opportunity, saves his kick on the first kill because they had him so cleanly with the bubble, and then kicks Altec backwards to pick up an easy double kill. So really well done gank by TSM, but FlyQuest shouldn't have been there in the first place.
I agree, they shouldn't have been, and if we're going to look at small mistakes, I actually want to critique Sven for taking that kill away. I feel like Ashe is going to scale better than Lee Sin, and you know you have Altec dead to rights. So personally, I would like to give that kill away if I were the jungler, but it is Sven farther ahead now. He's got a Hex Drinker, he's going towards his, maybe it's Ninja Tabby, we'll see what his next item actually is, but certainly a very far ahead Lee Sin, individually 1,400 gold over Moon. He's going to have a lot of effect this game.
Yeah, and Moon was spotted pathing between the bottom lane brushes there. Even though Altec and Lemonation did get double killed, they want to keep the pressure up in that turret because they are falling dangerously far behind in this game, and they're trying to convert some of the standing gold. So that bottom lane turret is their quickest access to gold. That's why Moon is down there. He took one visit up there. He might even go back right after taking the Krugs if he doesn't want to continue trying to power farm.
And it looks like Moon is going for the somewhat tanko build. If I had to predict, I think it's Trinity Force into Titanic Hydra into completing the center hold third item. That's because I wouldn't see you go Black Cleaver, and I think I've seen Triforce go into that build. But if TSM keeps as much control as they have right now, up 2 turrets to 1, and making it pretty close to 3 at this point, we might really never see Moon take off here, really.
Yeah, I mean, especially when they're in a 3,000 gold deficit against a team that has so much CC as well as burst potential. Shaco still has a lot of tools to try and avoid that. If Syndra presses ult on him, a lot of times you can just press your ultimate, you split into 2, you kind of avoid the damage of the ultimate a lot of the time if you do it just right. Hopefully Moon, as he's mentioned, Shaco taking so many games to master, has put in the time on it, but...
He's going to be on Bjergsen, though. Going to land this slow, going to land a whole crap ton of damage, forcing the flash out. Moon doesn't quite dodge it well enough. Ulti goes on to the correct one. Bjergsen guesses right, takes him out. Another kill, another backfired gank from Moon.
Great job by Bjergsen right there, kind of delaying the CC, and Moon was trying to use his ultimate to avoid those CCs, but he actually presses it early. He jumps the gun, then gets hit by the CC after the fact, and quickly one-shot. Great job by Bauerfrost, landed that bubble as well.
And you can see Moon actually quickly sidestepping towards Hex Drinker instead, realizing, dying too much to Syndra, and that's just slowing the power even farther. You don't think you really want to have to buy that item. Moon, unfortunately, though I wanted to see the Shaco competitive go well, not having a great game. Svenskeren easily out-jungling him. And he can jump the wall here and get away from this, so... And not a lot of threat right now. Svenskeren having his way with the map. FlyQuest hoping to lick their wounds, have a 4,000 gold deficit, which is pretty substantial at this point. They don't always have the strongest lanes, but they usually made up the gold with good rotations, but they're losing in turrets and drakes as well.
Yeah, and as has kind of been a pattern with FlyQuest during this small losing streak they've had, when they played against Team Dignitas, it felt like the plays that FlyQuest were going for were just backfiring, which is in such stark contrast to how clean they were playing early on in the year. They're making these missed executions on their riskier plays, like trying to push up the dual lane after your jungler had just gone top lane, or trying to pull off the turret dive between Balls and Moon, which is just completely missed in the coordination. And when those things miss, since you're already investing a lot to go for the play, that's why we call them a high-risk play. When they go wrong, you get punished heavily.
Yeah, you do. And so that's why some teams are more risk-averse. We've seen that work out for several of these squads. TSM actually been pretty proactive themselves, but those have actually worked out much better for them. Moon still walking by awards. Good job by TSM getting the trinkets and the Sightstone wards down the track. Shaco really, Moon hasn't surprised almost anyone so far in this game. Checking back on his skill order, did finish maxing Q. I've seen some will go like 3 points and then go to 2 shiv. He is, of course, maxing 2 shiv second. That's not a surprise to anyone. But the full 5 points deceive means he's invisible for a while. Now level 10 is keeping up XP-wise with Sven, but that gold deficit still 900.
Yeah, Svenskeren
1,300,
completely outganked him right there. And the 1,300 gold lead gives him a bunch of threat, even in a 1v1 against Shaco, because if he's able to land a Sonic Wave on the right target, simply kicking him away and then going for the execute can be enough to kill him. TSM really just starting to move into the jungle, which will more deny Moon experience and extend their lead.
And what we're seeing from TSM is the non-risky aggressive plays. It's they're roaming up as a team. The Nautilus and the Lee Sin and the Syndra all walk up the tri-brush, clear the wards, take a grump. All right, no one's here to defend. That's fine. We'll kill balls later. They've gotten all 3 outer turrets without any sort of major mistakes. 1 death the whole time through. Drake's up in a minute. Great, we can play for that next. Get the wards up, get the control back. And TSM just taking all of the map piece by piece.
Yeah, and this is what TSM want to get better at, obviously. They have mentioned the difficult transition period between losing Doublelift, bringing in Wild Turtle, and having to kind of relearn their shot calling game.
Yeah.
They have lost more games already, not matches, games, this split, than they did all 18 matches of Summer Split. So,
to be fair, they have lost more matches too.
Tough process. Yep, already with 2 match losses.
But you're right. Sorry to interrupt you. I didn't mean to.
It's totally fine. TSM obviously still trying to grow here, and this is still in the middle of their huge test week. They had a rough-looking week last week with a unconvincing win over Envy and then a loss to Echo Fox, and people were thinking coming up against C9 and FlyQuest, you know, what if they lose both and go 0-3? Then it's almost time to panic for TSM, and they have to make big changes. But if they can respond to that adversity and come up with a 2-0 week against C9 and FlyQuest, well, then it's kind of hard to argue that they would need to make changes. So this game and this series, incredibly important for the rest of TSM's outlook for Spring Split.
Absolutely agree, and TSM starting to look pretty good here in this one. Slow and secured, playing it well. A stun elimination is going to die right off the bat. Bjergsen gets the solo kill. Now the re-engage. They've actually traded one back. Nicely done. High gets the kill credit as Bjergsen goes down. Another 4v4 is here. Balls is going to land a... Oh, look at the damage output there. They might get a little bit more. Can they find these kills? TSM running. Wild Turtle slow, but the sapling snipe comes in. High is in the fray as well, and Turtle just barely lives. Sven delivers a shield, and I can't believe TSM survived off that. The Drake and the 1-for-1. FlyQuest have to get something out of this.
Yeah, they just managed to keep kiting. Bjergsen extends a little bit far to make sure they can get that one shot. And I do kind of almost want to call out, like, the Ignite on Shaco stopped him from getting in. If that's a flash Shaco, he makes it completely in and is able to burst him down a little bit with the Tiamat. And now they go for a siege, but TSM trying to turn it around. Missed Q by Svenskeren.
Monster trying to tank it up. High getting kicked around. I'll take this of HP, and that 2v4 turret defense plays out nicely. TSM don't lose anything off the fact their mid laner died, and they're back on the map, pretty much full HP, ready to keep going.
Yeah, that was a potential comeback opportunity for FlyQuest, being able to trade mid laner for support and then chase down, but the kiting from the volley spam from Wild Turtle as well as Biofrost, just speeding them up ever so slightly and throwing bubbles was key in letting them escape and lets them maintain this lead.
Lemon is dead from Fog.
Yeah, Ash Arrow says hello on its way past. And then you think Maokai behind, they're going to be able to pull this off, but notice how Balls cues potentially in the wrong direction, but that's not hugely why it happened. Nautilus Assault slows High's approach. Nami bubbles come in, and that low cooldown on volley as well as Wild Turtle, making sure to gain that distance with a flash over the wall, just lets them avoid pretty much all the threat.
Yeah, you just barely survived it all. That could have been so much better. I mean, it was 50 HP and a couple members away from this becoming 2-3 kills. Mid lane turret's gone. Maybe they can even look for the Baron risk, but that's maybe too much of a risk for them. And slim margins could have made a 2,000 gold difference here in this game. FlyQuest still having to recover. TSM up 5,000, up this Infernal Drake. And they might just still be in control. Packaged in a timeout off of High. And the map is reset now. The only objectives that are easy for TSM to take are tier 2 turrets and an attempted Baron sneak.
Yeah, very true. And one thing I will say about, as they potentially catch High, this could be a fight.
Here, he's playing too aggressively. That's going to be a nice route, almost killing him off. Another re-engage. What a kick! In for Svenskeren, delivers High, but he's going to barely sneak back out. A Fear and a Hanser. Can they find much more? Balls going to land the route again, and he's going to kill off Bjergsen. He pops he gets it. Well, it's going to lose his life. It's going to be 1-for-1. Wild Turtle down to 50 HP again, and High gets the exhaust in time to not die to Sven. Another incredibly tight 1-for-1.
Yeah, these fights are close, but you're really seeing Hanser being impossible to go through, and we're seeing very little impact from Moon Shaco in these team fights, unable to get in to execute any of these people. Balls just barely able to finish off Bjergsen, but it's another trade kill at the end of the day. And I was going to talk about these 5,000 gold leads and how I actually feel like in the last few weeks, 5,000 gold leads haven't been safe because teams are making enough mistakes. Bjergsen walks right into Altec's ultimate and pretty much gets burst down, and then High gets blasted around, able to flash to safety, and this is where things get a little bit dangerous because Balls is flanking around the top side of this fight, nearly gets bursted down by Bjergsen, but is able to finish him off, and then once again, just the overall kiting of TSM is allowing them to kind of get out of these situations that could be rather fatal. So not the cleanest mid-game, even though TSM isn't getting heavily punished for it.
But very, very close battles. And again, these 50 HP windows can make the difference between winning and losing control of the map or taking even more off of it. Elimination going to go back in for wave control, and by that I mean ward control into the river, and looks to get this vision advantage over Baron, but still more wards in the jungle that TSM will put down. It's certainly not darkness over there. As FlyQuest continues to wait to scale, and High going rapid fire cannon, good for you. More persistent damage, and maybe at a certain point they can start breaking through this Nautilus. It'll take a while. He's had so much money. Individually, he's actually richer than anyone on the FlyQuest team, so by rights they shouldn't deserve to kill Hanser quickly. Building defensively, even the Doran's Wing have health on them.
Very true. Super tanky. Also with Courage of the Colossus in these big team fights, a lot of the tanks have switched over to Grasp for stronger laning phases, but not this game. Balls and Hanser both very much about the team fighting phase.
TSM looking to take control of this
Crash
one.
Arrow.
And actually, most teams have been missing this game. They've been juked away properly. Stun's going to land on the balls. Doesn't really mean a whole lot there from Hanser. Maybe a bit of a wasted ult. Hooks back in on a High. That's some good damage. Bubble land as well. Big by Biofrost. High trying to run, and Svenskeren kills him off. That's a worthy trade, even though Altec does kill him. But look at that on the front line. Altec cannot withstand Hanser's damage, and Ball can do the same thing. Elimination dropping to Bjergsen in the back lines, and now Moon is suddenly sad and alone and running away and hiding. TSM in complete control out that fight.
Yeah, two big things to call out in that fight was Svenskeren getting the angle and landing a Q through just chaos, and then the fact that FlyQuest just could not deal with Hanser. He was a total monster in that fight, walking into about 3 people on FlyQuest, and TSM finally finds a fight that can convert their lead.
That's big right there. 8,000 gold leads. Still 4 are dead, but TSM taking the slower approach. They're going to recall and not go Baron.
Yeah, and the Ash Arrows definitely have not been the highlight from this game. Hard to land Ash Arrows against Karma sometimes, but then watch this. Watch the angle Svenskeren gets on this play. As FlyQuest is going in and High's kind of caught up, he flashes to kick right over High and then still lands the Q onto High, which allows him to execute. And then watch that. You know second threat up is Altec, and Hanser just walks next to him. All the damage is trying to hit Hanser there. Since they've been able to take out High earlier, they don't have enough. That allows Bjergsen to ghost around the side of the fight and also execute the other squishy targets. And then, in classic front-to-front team fighting, Balls was doing the same thing on the other side, but he's weaker than Hanser right now, so he falls first, and it's a 4-kill fight for TSM.
They can take so much more off the reset, of course. They recalled in time to be healthy and to fight for the map. They were on the map full HP, full cooldowns before FlyQuest were, and it means that there are no comeback pieces. And I do want to highlight just sort of how TSM played that, because they could have said, we won the team fight, let's rush Baron and reset afterwards. They instead took the very measured approach of taking down the mid lane tier 2, recalling before the respawns, so there's no chance FlyQuest takes anything at all. TSM want to make sure they take every minion, push all the waves, kill all the turrets, and don't leave anything left up for their opponents.
Yeah, I mean, especially after watching the game yesterday where TSM actually had about a 5,000 gold lead over Cloud9 in game 2 of that series. They ended up losing it while being a little bit over-aggressive in the base and getting caught out. So TSM need to make sure they're playing a little bit cleaner, so to speak, although the whole year people have been telling them to be more aggressive and feed a little bit more because that's the way you move into progress. But this game, playing it a little bit more measured.
You see that all North American LCS teams have a very good win rate.
Nice
with
shot.
a lead. The Shump comes in. They can't quite take the blue buff away. It's going to go to High. Doesn't mean much just yet, but Ball's now in the front line. Redemption going to buy a bit more, and Moon chunked out, nearly dead. Oh, that was his clue, and I take it back. But it's still going to be Balls dropping out 1 for 0 on this. They kite away. Elimination now going to be stunned. Biofrost the bubble, and Hanser getting the kill credit on this one. Deservedly so, I think. 2-0 on that fight. TSM doing everything they possibly want here in these battles.
Yeah, Moon definitely anti-hyping the Shaco pick so far. Shaco pick, we've never decided on the correct pronunciation because we never see him, but just hallucinating at random times in these fights and it's not showing much effectiveness. With 2 people dead now, it's going to be a very hard Baron to stop. Moon trying to be as sneaky as possible. Invisible blast cone!
Jumps over the wall, takes a whole ton of damage. He can't get away in time. They might kill Wild Turtle. High is trying, and he gets the one shut down, but here's the backup into the Baron. It will be secured, but can't complain too bad about a 1-for-1 fight. But that Baron, definitely no chance of going away now. Nicely picked up. TSM in more control, and High. Flash Q, he's gonna go down. Exhaust. Oh! Oh, High, that was pretty freaking nice. The Hex Drinker was up. He's dead now. He's dead. He's gone.
He's definitely dead.
Baron's killed him.
Okay.
But that was actually pretty slick. 2 for 2, 2 Baron buffs off. Better than the average expectation over there.
Just a Trinity Force and a Hex Drinker in this play as well with the double buffs. A dodge is the first skill shot. Hex Drinker prevents him from dying.
And he's got no cooldown.
And then an exhaust on what was the Thunderlord's proc from Bjergsen that I believe would have killed. And Bjergsen goes, wow, nice job, High, because that was unexpected.
Yeah, he had already burned W, of course. Q just got eaten by Hex Drinker, and he's like, well,
had nothing left.
I can auto-attack a Corki, but maybe a little unlucky. So nicely done by High, getting 2 kills when, you know, generally you're not supposed to get those, so that's kind of props to him. He's the kill leader of his team. But there is so much more work that has to be done for FlyQuest to turn around. They are heavily behind, and TSM just by the book, clearing the waves, taking their time, and they will push these turrets down soon.
Yep, 4 people on TSM still have the Baron buff right now. So expect the push since they have a 10,000 gold lead right now and Baron buff for another 2 minutes. The outer turrets, or the second tier turrets rather, are usually the target, but FlyQuest is not one to wait around. And with High having the package right now, if TSM moves up a little bit out of position, I'd expect them to do that. But actually, Moon's totally split pushing, trying to equalize the game. And this is actually just turret trading actually until the inhibitor turrets go down.
Well, it's going to be bot lane tier 2 pretty much for free. FlyQuest's team fighting is not as good as TSM's. They don't have that same tank killing. And
yeah, this is really interesting, actually. They're trying to get multiple turrets. The question is, though, TSM, with this numbers advantage, is going to push through to try and end the game. Nexus turrets are next up because there are 3 people that haven't recalled yet. How much can they get on here before FlyQuest can teleport back?
All right, here we go. On to the Nexus turrets right now. Hook on a High. That could be the game-winning pick. He's going to be kicked off, and there he goes down. Tidal Wave helping with that one. 1 turret gone. Svensker and a half Ultex back in the fray. The root's going to be nice. You get damage on the Haunter, but it just is irrelevant. The hook on Lemon. He's got a flash out as well. Nice knockup. Biofrost with this kill as well. Onto the Nexus turret number 2. It's going to go down quickly. Svensker dropping the aggro. Ball is going to drop next off. That's already 3 for nothing. Looking for the 4th. It's going to be right on the Moon's face, and now Ultex got nothing left to do. That's going to be the game. TSM controlled the whole way through. Take down game 1, looking to cement the week as a 2-0 against Cloud9 and former Cloud9 as FlyQuest dropped game 1.
Yeah, so a very strong start to the series for TSM, making the decisive call down the stretch to go up the mid lane, and really, I actually like the idea of that call for FlyQuest if High didn't get picked off before his team recall, because they could have fought back with 2 Nexus turrets in a 5v5 if it had actually been a 5v5. And once again, I feel like FlyQuest makes an aggressive call that actually backfires, which has been happening all too often in their last 3 matches.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate, right? And I wonder how sort of macro lens you want to look. Because if this has been how FlyQuest has been shot calling the entire season, which I would say it is, you look at variance and say, well, it worked 6 times and it didn't work 3 times. It's still 2-to-1 odds. You just happen to have the 6 at the beginning and 3 at the end, even though nothing actually changed. That's just how the coin flips lined up. And
exactly.
I personally kind of take that line of reasoning where I don't think they suddenly got worse at shot calling. It just maybe other teams got better at reacting, which maybe that does beg changes from High and the rest of the team. But, you know, at the same time, you have a non-team fighting comp where you're down in gold against Baron buff. Can you really defend bot lane tier 2? No. Can you defend inhibitor? Probably not either.
Exactly. That's why I think that call to be able to get 3 turrets in a trade, 2 in the top side and 1 in the mid, was a smart one, but it just looks really bad with the way TSM decisively ended the game. And part of that is because Haunter, once again, was a total monster. I'd say Svenskeren really stepped up against the pick that you hasn't seen in the LCS in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, the last time Shaka was picked, Svenskeren was in the European LCS.
Pretty sure at that point.
So definitely a long throwback right there, but 7-1-7 on Svenskeren, totally controlled the game.
Yeah.
Good job by TSM.
Beautiful Lee Sin play by him. Pretty amazing stuff. So TSM get that game 1 win, but now to give us some more insight on that, let's send it over to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. TSM with a victory over FlyQuest, but the big story here is we had a Shaco picked in the North American LCS. So too bad we don't have Kobe on the desk as the resident Shaco expert for the North American broadcast team, but I hope you guys can help illuminate to me why Moon may have jumped at this.
Just to start, I'm glad you say Shaco. I think Shaco is the right way to say it. Jad was talking, it's never been confirmed officially, but all the cool kids say
Shaco.
Shaco.
Otherwise, you can't say Faco.
Well, yeah, exactly, because the clone is Faco.
Mm-hmm.
That's great analysis. Anyways, we saw there was
Shaco, Faco.
You brought it up.
All right, you guys kept going with it.
All right, here we go. It's early. It's the beginning of the day. Let's stay on task. Talking about the Shaco pick from Moon didn't work out for them.
Right, so obviously there was a decent amount of jungle focus in the ban phase where we see the Kha'Zix, Graves, Rengar all taken out, Lee taken away pretty early. And Moon does have a pretty crazy champ pool, so it's not too much of a surprise to see him bust out the Shaco. The thing about that I like that TSM did was they took the Syndra last, and Syndra against these when you have a good matchup for the Syndra, she can be very punishing to play lower priority junglers into because she just commands the mid lane, and then you have to respond to that jungle, that focus. And you know, Shaco wants to run around the map. We saw the early Moby boots, and when you keep having to help your mid lane out, get wards for him, hold his wave, do all this kind of stuff, you just limit what he does.
Right. Exactly. And a lot of Shaco's pressure is actually you don't know exactly where he is or his gank route because he can lane gank and all of that. It's the same thing with Evelynn. But when you have to keep going mid and hold the wave, you're revealing yourself. A lot of your power budget actually goes away. And so you have to, you know, be powerful enough and ahead of the curve with damage to be effective in the game. And when he got stepped behind, then he's kind of a useless pick at that point.
Right. And so on top of helping out, you know, or rather having vision of that Shaco the entire time, that gives Lee Sin and Sven Skaren, you know, an immense amount of permission to go to lanes and do work in the early game. Let's go ahead and take a look at everything that Sven Skaren was able to pull together. Ganks to the top lane, ganks to the bot lane. You know, he was pretty much everywhere. Fantastic positioning within team fights as well.
All right, this is definitely the kind of case where, you know, Bjergsen kind of frees him up to do work, and he goes and puts in work. He had great team fights where he was constantly sniping high out into his team. We see one there. He also had good plays in the lanes. We saw one top. Now we see one coming bot lane. And just overall, he basically dictated how this game was going to go.
Yeah, and I think that Sven Skaren, he definitely got the upper hand and got all those kills. And the game ended as quick as it did because he had so many kills very early on. That's the snowball champion, the one that's going to start taking over the game and affecting multiple lanes. It's why you see junglers banned so much in solo queue, because they're the ones that everybody has to deal with.
Yep. Right, and I mean, a good point about the fact that he did have so many kills, he was a threat. It wasn't just that he was insecting people into the team, it was that he was actually killing people as well. So he trades his life there with Hai, who was a massive problem in team fights when he went untouched. They're able to basically trade your jungler for mid laners, a great trade overall. So Sven Skaren was a huge factor in why they won. Moon, very sad about the Shaco pick. So often in team fights, he was just hitting Haunter or tanks and couldn't get involved on backline threats at all.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I would change if I was Moon going into the next game is you would play to the lane, and it kind of sounds, you know, ridiculous because they have a Syndra that's shoving in your mid. Play to the lane that has the CC. We saw Sven Skaren go top very early on in the Nautilus Maokai matchup. If the Shaco comes top, level 3, level 4, and goes for the gank against the Nautilus, it's very hard to get away. You can throw down boxes in front of his hook. You can actually stop him from getting away. And you have the Maokai for gank assistance. So you can get an early farm lane up top.
Yeah, Sven Skaren picking up player of the game there, 7-1-7 on the Lee Sin. We had been talking all weekend about what we wanted to see out of TSM. More proactivity out of, in particular, Sven and Bjergsen, but the solo laners, Haunter included, and we're getting that. Now, Bjergsen did, of course, have a few missed positions to get hit by Varus ultimates in this, but ultimately the pressure he was putting on in the mid lane was pretty insane considering how much visitation Moon made there.
Right, and if FlyQuest wasn't so on top of punishing the little bit of greed from TSM, that turret would have dropped at like 7-8 minutes. But, you know, FlyQuest is a good team. They play well around high. They call in reinforcements to punish TSM overextending for that mid lane turret, but that just held on for a little bit, and eventually they cracked that turret, and Sven was running all over the map. So.
And that's such a weird situation, too, because, like, just to like jump to something else really quickly, that middle turret was so close to going down, and there was a play that FlyQuest was making when it had about 1 hit left. And honestly, after that, you could probably just let the turret die to minions. First turret gold only goes to people when they're around it. You actually deny about 1,000 gold that's inevitably going to go over to the enemy team.
Well, yeah, that's a possible strategy. Obviously, they were more concerned with picking up kills.
Like 650
on 650 on Bjergsen. But my question would be, let's return to the Shaco pick in general, because you did mention, yes, a lot of jungle bans went through, but Moon is the one jungler in this league that has a very deep pool. We have the Nidalee still available. We have the Evelynn still available. Why go for the Shaco, something so far outside the meta, as opposed to something that is for him, at least a little bit more tried and true. We've already seen it.
I mean, I can't say for sure, but people know to expect the Evelyn. You start preparing for that in your game plan. I'm sure TSM did their homework. They said if he picks Evelyn, we're going to try and do this kind of stuff. When he picks Shaco, you might not be familiar with the clear speeds as much. You might not be as, I mean, everyone's playing against it in solo queue a little bit, but not necessarily competitive what they might set up with it. And so it's just a surprise pick where if it starts getting off the ground, it becomes a huge terror. But
these surprises haven't been working for them though. The Jarvan pick that they ended up having, also this, it's not.
That's
really
what
like
I'm struggling with is the fact that it's
okay.
It just looks like experimentation for experimentation's sake at this point. A Nidalee, in my opinion, would fit a lot better in this composition. You have Varus, Corki, and Karma. It looks like a poke comp to me. Why not throw a Nidalee in there? Give yourself the ability to siege up on some turrets. Still has a pretty decent clear. Lots of lane pressure early on in the game. She could still go top lane and gank with the Maokai assistance. So it just feels like FlyQuest is trying to do too much in the draft as the patch changes, and they're going to now not forfeit. That's probably not the right term, right? Forfeit some games. They're going to lose some games as a result, which they could be winning.
Well, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, is the fact that on red side you don't need to ban the OPs. What would TSM have done one patch ago? Rengar, LeBlanc, Malzahar. Here. Or Rengar, LeBlanc, Camille. Here, Malzahar, Shen, Rengar. 3 things that FlyQuest actually plays super well, and they would love to first pick in the first rotation. They can't do it because the red side bans have changed. So I think that's a big reason you're seeing more experimentation.
FlyQuest a little hurt by the new change to the drafting. After a quick break, we'll see if FlyQuest can bounce back in their Game 2 against TSM. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the North American LCS.
Vincent, are you in the zone? Yeah, don't let him get in the zone. Vincent's in the zone right now. Dude.
It's time to blood blast them.
Pretty good by Sven, though. Nice hook on a ball. That was beautifully executed. The hook lands as well from Hanser. Flashing, but Sven's already there. Q's going to land. Now, can they get much more? Altec in a bad spot. There's the kick back into the rest of the team. Nowhere for Altec to go, and Sven is absolutely everywhere. Flash Q. He's going to go down. Exhausted. That was pretty freaking nice. The TSM controlled the whole way through. Take down game 1. Looking